I think, than anybody I can put a name to promote our sport.
The archer who owns all the world records, John Demmer III.
You know, the more difficult a thing is, the more important the mental game becomes.
I didn't eat any supper yet either. How about you guys? Did you guys eat yet?
I didn't eat
Oh,
it.
you know,
I got some crunch berries.
Oh, yeah.
Grayson Barlow.
It's like me taking 3 or 4 years off your eyes just because I weakened that prescription in the shooting eye.
And don't put everything into my shot that I should, that I get a lot of drop on those heavy arrows. It's dropping all the way down. He said, well, you might want to think about going to a lighter arrow and string walking. And that's what got that started. So.
Odds, and you squeeze your glutes and you squeeze your hamstrings, you're automatically tightening that lower back. And for some of us bigger guys, some of us older people, I guess, oh my God, I just classified myself as old. You know, I don't think NTS is the way. And that's why, because you can't expect everyone to have that same level of mobility that it takes to get the full coil. Are you having issues with audio, Elton?
No, I'm trying to set up the iPad, so I don't have to sit here holding
yeah,
it.
take your time, no worries.
Okay.
So I, you know, in my opinion, Jack, one of the reasons that we don't see the injuries in Barebow specifically is because we're not shooting that heavy weight. We can get away with a not so wonderful alignment. You know, I don't think the rotational draw is really good either. And the only reason I say that is because for simplicity reasons, I like what Grayson does. I like when you're setting that alignment early. And I'll be honest with you, I took my level 4 and I had multiple, I met with Guy Kruger directly. And this thing isn't what they taught us in my level 4. They taught us about setting that barrel of the gun really early. But then when what we end up seeing is we see that draw to load that comes within an inch of the chin and then into anchor, and people somewhere along the line that transferred into this. And you know, I don't really care. I don't care how you do it. Whatever you do, if you repeat it, it's gonna work. You know, but as far as injuries, I think maybe an Olympic recurve, you could see injuries because you're shooting at higher poundage. In Barebow, we don't do that. We don't shoot those crazy poundage like Brady does and shoot 70 meters and stuff. So we get away with more, period, point blank. So Elton, how was your ride?
That sucked.
I'm glad you made it, dude. I'm glad you made it.
Late. Yeah, no,
you're like stressed out. You're like,
yeah. So it's actually, I gotta take this off. It was actually worse because but the snow hitting coming down so hard, I had to have the defroster heat cranked in the truck. So because the wipers were, I set up, and of course that makes the cabin like stupid hot, right? So we were sweating it out in the cabin. I actually had the windows partway open, just so that we didn't die. It was real hot. But yeah, that was kind of white knuckle. I was the one of the few dumbasses out on the road. I got caught due to a travel delay. I stayed for dinner with my parents, and so I got on the road late, and that just chain reaction of events, and it was. But I'm home, thankfully. Thank the Lord.
Yeah, dude. And, I'm glad. I didn't know if you'd like feel after that ride. I didn't know if you would feel like even wanting to get on. So I was like,
oh, I really.
I'm gonna ad lib the crap out of this one and see if he actually gets on, and if he does, we'll be good to go. But so,
no, glad I made it.
What have you been up to besides archery? You fishing or what?
I've been sort of. So I actually came in on your conversation topic like at exactly the right time because
Perfect.
I'm gonna say some stuff that is gonna be controversial. But it's my personal
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
my discovery. So
Not
take
the
that.
Barebow project. We never say anything controversial.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. Have at it. The floor is yours.
All right. So let me give you the 90-second backstory on what my life has been up to. We went to Florida, vacation, came home, got COVID, right? Wasn't horrible, was like a bad cold, somewhere between a cold and a flu, but it knocked us out for like a week and a half. So real tired. And I didn't train at all, right? I just put my indoor bow together like right before I left Florida. I started to find my tune because I swore I was going to get started earlier this year because I always end up waiting until November. The universe does not want me to start before November, apparently, because I went to Florida, I came home, I had COVID. I didn't feel like shooting until the end of October. And here I was, beginning of November, trying to find a tune. I had 2 sessions in, and I realized I had lost a lot of strength, like an unusual amount of strength. And I don't know if it was because of the virus or just because I stopped shooting after Target Nationals. Like I literally didn't touch a bow after Target Nationals. I went fishing a whole bunch, tried to go up for salmon a whole bunch. And COVID screwed that up. Sorry, John. But yeah, so what happened was I was way weak. Like previous years average 36-ish, 36, 37 off the fingers. And I find reasonable tune in that range. I was struggling to pull 32, like off the fingers. It was really bizarre, right? So I tried to find a mediocre tune that worked. And in the process, I was trying to find my form. Now, the backstory that I want to go into is for Target Nationals, I was experimenting with a few different things and, trying to work on my target panic and all that jazz. And so I wanted a more stable hold, right? So I dropped my anchor down to here.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is the antithesis of my normal indoor anchor, which is up here.
Right.
Okay. And so this I found gave me a lot of comfort for target outdoor, all the way up to like 38, 39 pounds, way above my average, right? And I did not train a lot for target outdoor. You're going to see a theme here. I didn't put a bow together until 7 weeks before Target Nationals. So
I think I remember that.
Guilty there. But yeah, so I had a lot of draw power, even though I didn't train a lot. And what I found was being down in this line lower made it easier.
Yep.
Okay. And I have been kind of lamenting the impact of my NTS training and trying to apply it to Barebow for a while. I mean, I've been vocal about that to a bunch of our crowd,
Sure.
You include.
Yeah.
Didn't work for me. It broke me. It made things worse. And so it was weird because
I can relate to that statement.
It was weird for Target Nationals because I found myself like, oh, down here is comfy and I feel braced. I'm inside the bow and everything's great.
Yeah.
So, that's the backstory about Target Nationals and the low anchor. So I go into trying to set this bow up, first tune, early September, before the trip, and then COVID, and then coming back early November, 1 session, indoor anchor, but trying to maintain that NTS inline barrel of the gun with the shoulders down.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look, staring in the mirror, I realized something. I'm like, my arm has to come up here. Right?
Yeah.
Be in line with and my elbows out here in the draw force line and all that jazz. I'm creating sort of an inverse trapezoid here. Right. And while a triangle is, an exception, at least if we were to draw.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. We got it.
Triangle strong. Trapezoid is not quite as strong, right? So with the compressive force of the bow trying to pull me together, I'm using a ton of muscles, keep these shoulders down in that trapezoid. So here's the controversial part. That was the epiphany, because I actually ended up in an injury. Second week of November.
Wait. So you ended up with an
So I was
trying to shoot NTS.
In a sense, yes, with an indoor anchor.
All right.
COVID bout, and I'm like, all right, let's get back to training. I gotta find this tune, right? And get ready. Even though I'm late again. Shoulders down, tucked in tight, you know, like the NTS, barrel the gun, but high indoor anchor, right? For the correct indoor crawl. And a week, not even a week, but 3 days, 4 days after that first training session, and I took it kind of easy. It was mostly like holding drills and stuff like that, to try to gain better sight control, right? At the point of process. My trap and my lat started hurting a lot on my left side.
Both sides. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's extremely rare. Like I don't recall I've ever had that. I've had like draw side trap issues, but never both sides. So I went to a chiropractor who's pretty renowned, I guess, in some circles in this valley. And he's holistic naturopath. And so he examined me, did his thing. He's like, you have nerve damage. I'm like, wait, what? Apparently I had started to impact the nerve endings in the trap and the lats to some extent, where I didn't have full control of my deltoids. Like he would put resistance on my arm and I would try to lift it like up like that. And I couldn't do it. So he's like, it's gonna take like a couple sessions to fix this. He's like, I can fix this. I've seen this before. Blah, 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 blah. So I put my faith and trust in him, and it wasn't misplaced. But it meant 3 weeks of I can't touch a bow, which kind of sucks, right? And so, you know, in general that sucks. And then it's it's like 2 months of the classic. So what am I going to do? But I wrote it out, and I picked up the bow week and a half, 2 weeks ago, whatever, like with the holidays and everything. And I started trying again, and I still didn't feel strong. Like 32 pounds like this, like was rough. I'm like, all right, something doesn't add up. Like I've never had issues shooting below 35, 36 pounds, even with atrophy and all that jazz, because I haven't touched a bow since Target Nationals or whatever, you know, continuously, like shooting for an hour plus every day or whatever. And so I attributed it to possibly, you know, the damage or muscle growth issues or whatever. But I still kept trying to find the correct form. So Matt Yak is going to laugh because last week I started trying different form, right? Here we are 3 weeks before the classic. And I'm like, this isn't going to work for me. Let me try something different. And that is probably the premise of my tongue-in-cheek joke this morning. And probably the main talking point that we really want to get at is not being afraid to change things. So the controversy, instead of doing the NTS thing up here, I am challenging everyone, if they're willing to take on a form change, at whatever point they're willing to take on a form change, don't be afraid to let the shoulders and traps come up just a bit.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is you go from a trapezoid that's like this to more of a trapezoid that is more horizontal, right?
Sure.
And it actually brings your wrist, bow shoulder, draw shoulder component closer to your arrow draw force line, right? Your shoulders are they're down and they're back here, and when you hunch up, you're bringing them up an inch or two, okay? And that shortens the height of that trapezoid. It flattens it out, and it allows you to get inside the bow more.
Sure.
And so I think the controversial, you know, walking point, everybody's gonna be like, oh my God, is that NTS works fine if you're low in a recurve style anchor.
Right.
The moment you start moving that anchor up, the geometry and physiologically, you need to move your body to compensate. And that means
that makes sense.
And I will be the first, and I've told people this, I've coached people this because I believed in NTS at the time. I said, you need to keep your shoulders down. I'm going to proudly say I was wrong. Like I don't stand behind that anymore.
No, I don't either.
If your shoulders want to come up and forward a little into that hunch, and the traps want to contract, and you want to bring those shoulders up and closer to that arrow draw line.
Yeah. It's that you have to be careful. Just for clarification for the people who end up listening to this and you can't see the video, like you have to understand though, you can't, if one comes up, the other one has to come up with it.
Yeah. Come up together.
You can't go to here and go like this. Because
it's not a shoulder collapse.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens, a lot of people who with target panic, they will actually come back into full draw. And as they anchor, and what happens is they don't collapse here. They don't collapse here. They collapse here like this.
Yeah.
And the head moves and the shoulder moves at the same time. So people, it's not, understand that we're not saying, or I mean, I'm not saying it at all. This is on Elton, but I understand what Elton is saying, and I agree it makes sense. I think the key component here also is that anchor is going to have a huge impact on your mobility to be able to do that. I have a low anchor, corner of my mouth, basically corner of mouth all the time. I've never changed my anchor point from day one. And I'm not opposed to changing it at all now. But I haven't had to. But when I went from Olympic recurve just to that, I really struggled with some shoulder pain. But the shoulder pain wasn't, and I was doing that NTS rotational ish that I was taught incorrectly, but I was taught to do it that way. And that's not, first of all, that's not NTS. Anyone who's doing this stuff that's not NTS. I'll take that to the bank. And if they're teaching that, they're incorrect. But forget that part. The going from here to this position and the way, well, I mean, you can see it when I go from this position here, that's a pretty standard NTS position to here. This whole shoulder goes like this.
Right.
And it's super
if you
uncomfortable.
If you don't let it, right? So we're going to say from here.
Yep.
It
puts strain on top of the shoulder.
You put a ton of strain in this whole section here.
Yeah.
And body doesn't want to do that, right? So we are forcing it, and we can at up to a certain poundage range. But I can tell you that my holding power, because I'm like right on that cusp, I'm in that recovery zone of how. And
everybody's going to be different on that.
Yeah, but what I'm able to say, and why I feel like this was an epiphany recently, is that I'm right on the cusp of draw weights, right? Because I've beat or whatever from the virus or time off or whatever. So I didn't feel like I had a lot of draw power trying to do like this. And in the last 2 sessions, just doing this, coming up like equally, like, so hopefully you can see if I tip that, come up just equally and bring that whole back, wrist, shoulder line up closer. I can easily say I feel more comfortable drawing on it, like an extra 2 pounds.
Yeah, right? I'll tell you, that's something that Dick Tone actually teaches in they call it the natural draw cycle. They actually talk now. They if you watch Casey Caulfield, it's here and it's up, down, and in. It just kind of does like an S of sorts, and it makes sense. You have to shoot what's comfortable for you. NTS isn't necessarily comfortable for everyone, and or you can call maybe a linear draw isn't comfortable. People they love NTS. That's fine too.
It doesn't matter. Like
your mobility, my mobility, your bone structure, your shoulder width, arm width, all of that. So I love people they do this, or like they go like this and they bring their hand in and they're like, oh, well, that's where look where my anchor ends up when I go like this. Even with compound, that doesn't work.
No, that doesn't work.
It does. You can't base your full drop position off of that.
So it's impossible because we're not 2-dimensional bodies, right? We're not flat. So there has to be, and you post that picture all the time, the standard form triangle. You have wrist, bow shoulder, draw shoulder, draw elbow, arrow, and hook hand, all in line.
Yeah.
That kind of deal.
And again, you say that, I post that. I am not telling you need to be in that exact position.
No, it doesn't need exact.
Get as close to it as you can. You'll be okay. And again, how many people prove us wrong or prove NTS wrong that shoot the best scores in the world, that aren't in perfect alignment. They win nationals, they win US Open. They're not in that pristine Brady full draw position. And there's a reason, there's a reason. And we recommend that I guess Elton, that we're really going down the wrong rabbit hole at the moment, but that's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay because it's a discussion that I in some ways I may have avoided it, but I wouldn't want to have this discussion with anybody else besides you because there's not, in my opinion, this might be a controversial statement as well. There are not many Barebow coaches out there.
Sure.
If I had to call someone like I've really worked hard on it for a few years now. Yeah. You have been at it longer than I have from a Barebow coaching standpoint. Like I trust your judgment on what I do. You're one of few people other than maybe Demmer that I honestly, and that's questionable, but like, no, in all seriousness though, from a coaching standpoint, from an analytical coaching standpoint, from someone who I know understands NTS, understands Barebow, like if I had to pick somebody to say, I want somebody to work with me, it would be you. So, well, I mean, 100%, no, I'm not bullshitting, but there's not many people out there. There might be zero besides you that I honestly say, like, I have the utmost confidence in people that understand it. I think I'll give Rick Stonebreaker a shout out too, because Rick shot Olympic recurve. He's a hell of a Barebow shooter. He understands, his way. I know he has his own sort of way, but Rick understands things too. I don't know how Rick is as a coach, but I know he understands it. But so, anyways, continue. Sorry to go down that.
I'm gonna summarize by saying that and I agree with you. Like you can shoot any way, right? And you can make any form work.
Sure.
If you're willing to invest the time. And like I said, I was trying this. And if I only wanted to shoot 30 pounds, 28 pounds, whatever, for whatever reason, I could keep my shoulders down and low. I could, right? Yeah. Right. The old adage of you can make a Ford Pinto, a 6-second car on a quarter-mile drive comes to mind. How much effort you want to put into it.
Yep.
Can you do it? Absolutely can. If you want to invest the time, the money, the rebuild, all that jazz, you can do it. But are there easier ways to make a 6-second car? Probably.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're not like emotionally attached to say, I need to make that Ford Pinto a 6-second quarter-mile car, then your doors open, right? Yeah. And suddenly the world's your oyster, to coin a cheesy cliche. And I guess that is the segue to get us back on topic, right? Yeah. So that's all the backstory. It was way more than 90 seconds. Sorry. But I have been trying to find a new tune. And so with the new form, I was like, well, what the hell? I tried a new grip, right?
Go ahead. I was just going to say, tell us what the change was before you dive into the tuning process.
So I was playing with a lot of different grip position placement type changes. And what ended up happening was I found a new position that I kind of like my hand fell to it smoothly every time. So it's like, let me try this. And I liked it. The only problem was it completely kiboshed the close to him. And when I say close, half here, because he's seen those arrows fly. It was kind of, not up to my normal standard. But it was, this is a 4-week tune. So like we're 4 weeks out and here's where I'm at. Like it's shootable, but it ain't great. But once I changed the grip placement, it was just like, it went from barely passable to, I'm not showing up at an event like this. Like I wouldn't even go to a regional event, shoot that. I'm like, I got to find something different. So that was the catalyst.
That started the tuning process, the retuning process.
All over again. I basically said, look, start from scratch. So I took the bow. The bow's still the same, right? My center shot is the same. I run roughly the same biter plunger tension. Can you go over it real quick? Like go over your equipment, so just to give everybody a mental picture of what you're running, and then like what are you doing for your arrow? What are you doing for tiller, brace height, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah. So let me see. Trying to coalesce my thoughts. Thank you, dear.
Here's the bow. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank
You're
you, Brandon.
welcome.
Have a lovely wife. Okay, so this is the new grip. Yay, Paul Yeager. I asked for something ridiculously hard, and he did it.
Nice.
Nobody else asking for this because I should be the only person that's that much of a pain in the ass. But having a white palm grip is apparently really difficult for the chemical mixture because it tints very easily. And he warned me it will probably yellow or tint. I said, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to get grimy and dirty and sweaty anyway. But I wanted clear with white. So this was the new grip. It's a JD3 grip. I had intentions on grinding on it, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that just yet. But this is what prompted the change in grip position. I'm running a Spig ZT Rest because they're cheap and they work. I do have the German snipers. I have some shots of my best scores with them. To me, they take a little more effort to get a good tune. And I'm not against doing that,
Right.
but I am doing that when I start with only like 4.5, 5 weeks of lead time.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm just going to run a ZT. It's going to be easier for me to get a close tune. Fighter, plunger. I run it with the blue tip, medium spring. I count the right way, John. It's 0 all the way on the inside, 5, and then 10 all the way on the outside. And so I run somewhere between like, depending on the tune, whatever the arrow wants, it's going to be like somewhere between 6.5 and 8.5-ish, somewhere around there, right? I try to stay away from over 9. If it gets to the point where I'm over 9 and it's like that soft and I need that much, then usually that means that my arrow's not quite right. Hoyt Epic, older riser.
It's a great riser.
MK Archery, MX limbs.
So it's a 25-inch riser and long limbs.
Yeah, 25-inch riser, long, I think the 36 limbs. I haven't measured what the draw off the fingers is. Frankly, it doesn't matter. Like when you're tuning and you get to a point where you're adept at tuning, the exact poundage is trivial. And that was a novice mistake I made my first year and a half. I was like, I want to set it at 33 pounds and then find an arrow that tunes that bit. Yeah, that's the hard way.
Yeah.
Don't find the arrow you want to shoot and get close and then twiddle with your tiller bolts to get the draw weight to move it to where it needs to be. And if you can't, like you go all the way out to like the 5 max turns out and you're still too hang on, it's been a long drive. If it's still too weak, then yeah, you have the wrong arrow. If you turn it all the way up and it's still too stiff, you have the wrong arrow, right? You're outside of the range of your limb capability for your personal draw length, your arc anchor, etc., etc., etc. Right. But that's the setup. Do you have any questions? Oh,
what's your brace height and your tiller? Do you remember?
I have no idea what my brace height is.
Okay, all right.
That's how important it is to me. It's over 8.5, 8 3/4.
Yeah, 25-inch. It's usually somewhere between 8.5, 8 3/4. I have found. I shouldn't. Let me hold on.
Yep. That's
what I have found that works best for me, and like Maggie's, I think is 8.5 or 8 3/4 as well. So, you again, it's everybody's got their own niche, their own feel. Like you can't. There's no cookie cutter. This is exactly what it should be. It
shouldn't be.
You got to find what works for you.
It's like cooking. There's probably like 40 different ingredients, and how you want to apply them and how you want to use them in your recipe is really personal. And that's one of the things I know. And I just wait in case anyone didn't know.
Of course, none other.
Right. So that's kind of like one of the things I'm thinking about when I was driving earlier today before the stuff, when I was allowed to actually multitask, was talk about confidence, psychological confidence, and coupled to tuning, right? So I know there's probably a lot of novice archers watching and listening to this. And there's intermediates who have dabbled in tuning. And I'm going to flat out say, again, possibly controversial, if you want to be a better shooter, you have to understand all of your tuning parameters. Okay, and I'll say that again. you have to understand all of your tuning parameters. You need to understand, like, if I change this one thing, what does it do? And what's the ripple effect? Like, what are all the other things? Those are the conversations. Those are the very constructive conversations that archers should be having with each other. Not the, what's your bracelet? Because I want to set it to that. What's your tiller? Because I want to set it to that. You need to understand, like, what does a slightly positive tiller affect? And it's trivial, but what does it do? What is a slightly negative? And yeah, you had asked, and for the record, I always try to shoot to as close to 0, right? I want my top and my bottom even.
That's exactly what I do.
That's just me. Now, there's people that like it slightly positive because of where their percentages of hook finger pressure are. And so this is one of those things I'm talking about. You understand intrinsically, like, if I start applying more index finger pressure on the string at my hook, it's going to change what I need on the tiller bolts. Okay. And vice versa. So that ability to understand the ramifications of what change you make, and every single change. When I mean every single change, I mean every single change, like however nuanced. It's not the obvious stuff like biter pressure plunger or plunger pressure. It's everything down to where do I put my hand on the grip, like I said, finger hook pressure, where you are on your hook, right? If you're past the first joint, or or if you're more inboard of the first joint, and no right answer, and that's the thing a lot of people don't want to hear. They're like, well, I need to know what the right thing to do is. There are, and this is the Ford Pinto analogy again, there are easier ways to get there sooner, but they're not the absolute. You can do it a different way. So like anyone that tells you, like, you shouldn't do that. If it's something you're married to, you can do it. It may take you longer to master that approach. But no one should ever tell you shouldn't do it. Now, having said that, I'm going to contradict myself by saying, if you want to shoot better sooner, don't be afraid to try so much stuff that you tend to try some of those easy paths, right? And that's, I think, the crux of my tongue-in-cheek joke this morning. I think based on the responses, there is a good cadre of community that has shed the fear, and they're vocal. They're willing to be vocal about it.
I agree.
2-3 years ago, like, it was, and outside of Barebow, it probably still is. It's kind of gospel, like, yo, don't touch anything. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're gonna change something like a month before an event? Like, when you do that, and I really want to thank Demer for instilling this in me, and many other people. Shedding the fear of making the change helps you learn. It helps you learn those nuances, those ripple effects, those things. As long as you're willing to put the time in to be analytical and observant and say, well, if I do this, right, and give it a chance. Don't shoot it once and be like, oh, that did this, because that might have been just a bad shot.
So, just there's a little stroke of irony here, people, because Elton is the one who watched me shoot a dime-sized group with 3 arrows at Indoor Nationals in 2020. And literally, I turned around with this look on my face, and Elton was like, dude, what did you just do? And he did stand there and watch me playing with my rest when I realized that and I was like, yeah, well, the wire just fell down. I thought I put it right back where it needed to be because the screw was loose. The screw completely fell out. And he was like, what did you just do? I was like, I don't know. I have no idea what happened. But you want to talk about, I shot a 276 the first half, and then to have that happen on the first end of the second half.
Panic.
But you have to control it. But like, you were the one, like, don't be afraid to make those changes. Well, some of my major changes was adopting a rest that is so much more simple to shoot, and that AA free flight. It's so easy to adjust. I literally have no issues with it. Same Allen wrench that fits everything else on the bow. I don't like, and that's a small detail, but my AAE, that's one of the reasons I was using the AAE plunger. Now it's the same thing with the Whiffler plunger. It's one Allen wrench set for my entire bow. that is simplicity. That is easy. I'll take easy.
I had a tiny, and I got razzed for this by he'll go unnamed. But I got at like a lot of shooting sessions for carrying a little Ziploc bag. It was like yay big. It had
15,000 Allen wrenches in it.
no. I had five. I had
Oh,
five
good.
a biter plunger wrench, and that was it. Like that's all I needed. And it was kind of like, dude, go get a real folding Allen key tool. And I'm like,
You can't.
but it's so big. It takes so much space. Like
Yeah,
I'm a minimalist by heart. Like
sure.
when it comes to like I love collecting gear. I have tons of all sorts of, but when I'm like in the moment, I don't want like extraneous clutter, right? I want it like laser focused, because if I'm at a point where I have object X and support objects A, B, and C for it, and I know that's all I need, that tells me I know exactly what I need to work on that thing and nothing more. And if I need something else outside the boundaries of what I brought, that means I screwed up. That means I did not prepare object X properly, because those other things that are, manipulated, repaired, changed, whatever, outside of objects A, B, and C, those are supposed to be immutable things. Like I should not be changing my tiller in an event. Period. Like I'm not afraid to, but I don't necessarily need a tool to do that, because it's not something I expect to do. May I change my biter center shot? May I change my spring tension or change my tip or to spring? Possibly, sure. At a bigger event, if it's a national level event, will I bring spares? Absolutely. Will I carry them in my quiver? Not usually. So there's something to be said for that simplicity. I absolutely agree with you. It is 100% on point. And if you feel like you need, a box full of stuff and you need to tow it behind you to an event, psychological.
You have too much stuff.
What's that?
You have too much stuff.
Yeah.
Too many different things going on.
You lack that psychological confidence in your equipment and your understanding of how you built and tuned that equipment.
100%.
And so that is the crux of this conversation, right?
Yeah.
So while I said it, I was absolutely being humorous, because I have no fear. Like, as I said, after changing up my grip position, everything, it was like the arrows I have are not going to work. They would come off the bow, no contact. They were clean, but they would end up going tail right, like 8 yards down range. But because I had 230 grains up front, a 220 grains, a 70 grain brass insert on the front of a recurve RZ, and a 150 grain Irani arrow point, for a total of 220 up front. Like it tracked, front of center was like, well, I'm going where you pointed me. But the tail was like, well, I'm not ready to go there. So I'm going to like crab down the range for about 10 yards from 8 to 18 before I straighten out. And so they would land roughly where I want, but not forgiving, right? So like if I made any kind of error, it would open the group like to the blues, to the blacks. And I'm like, I know I am shaky right now, but I'm not that bad, right? It's so there's something else I need to chase here. And so I woke up before I left for Jersey yesterday morning, and I said, I'm not eating breakfast. I am not satisfied with my arrow tune from Friday night based on the changes. I do want to shoot this new form because I feel more in control and in power with both shoulders slightly up.
Both Grayson and Demmer do that a little bit.
They do. There's other archers that absolutely do it too. So it was kind of a cue to say, let me try it. I wasn't afraid. I said, let me just try it. I don't care. It's 2 weeks to an event.
Yep.
What's the worst that happens? I probably won't shoot worse. I'll just go back to the other form. Right.
What did we talk about all the time with the whole mental game thing? Like you have to have like 0 F's to give. You have to, and I said that to Spanky when when I had my first coaching session with him, and I said like you have to not care. Like if and I teach that my mental game approach is, I call it the building blocks of the mental game. Like you're talking about your your tune and your equipment and simplifying things, like that's all part of the mental game. And nobody teaches that. And it drives me insane. They're like, oh, mental game, 100% control. Yeah, that's a dig. Sorry, Joel. But it's you have to teach that stuff. That is part of competition archery. It's not just determination and I'm going to hold it.
It's not.
There's so much more that goes into it. You got to organize your brain. You have to organize your stuff, your life, your shot process, your tune, everything. It's not just up here.
Right. And so I'm kind of on a car kick lately, so I'll throw another analogy out there. The best F1 drivers in the world, while they rely on their pit crews, they understand their vehicles intimately, right? They don't just get the car and say, I'm going to trust that you guys did what you needed to do, and I'm just going to get in there and mash the pedal to the floor. Yep. They understand the vehicle and all of its setup intimately, and they know what to ask for if they need it changed. Now, we don't have pit crews. If you have a coach that's willing to make changes for you when you ask for them, that's great. I think he's doing more than he's supposed to. And he may actually even be doing you a disservice, because you need to know, like I've had students that I insisted, like, you need to know this, because you may end up with a situation on the line where you might have to resolve this yourself. Like right then and there.
100%.
Wife is raising her hand because she knows that the Classic 2 years ago, she was running over to me like, my arrow rest moved. I'm like, you know how to fix this. I taught you how to fix this. So,
In the panic, I forgot everything.
I'm a lover.
Yeah, I hear the peanut gallery.
I fixed it anyway. But the point is, as a proficient archer, if you want that psychological confidence, you need to know, if I do this and I'm walking around, right?
Yep.
And this thing gets caught on my quiver, it goes like this.
How are you going to fix it? What do you got to do?
I'm not effed. I'm literally not effed. I can fix this in about 30 seconds. Now, I don't have an arrow shaft on me, but I can get it close enough.
Yep.
Like so.
Yep.
I knock my arrow and I just start pulling. Oh, you couldn't see what I did. So what I did.
I saw it. Yeah, you pulled the wire out.
In,
held that in. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Don't loosen the screw. Don't bother. It's a waste of time.
Just push it. Yep. Just push it.
Freaking muscle it. Push it in past, and then knock your arrow. Put it on, and then gently just kind of give it light pushes until the arrow sits at the center shot that you originally wanted.
Yeah, and it's just to talk about that. Elton's showing his bow and his plunger there. You have to know where that arrow is running through the plunger. You want it ultimately to run through the middle of the plunger. Always want, but
too many people
like, I don't think people, like, they might look at it and it might be like the upper third or like 2/3 of the way up the plunger. Like, it's okay. Like, no, it's not okay, because you have to know that it goes in that spot, the exact same spot. And you could get that spot. It's easier to line the shaft up with the center of the plunger every time, as opposed to 2/3 way up the plunger. So, like, yeah. But anyway,
so I'm going to interject here. So everybody, remember that story that Frank told about indoor nationals?
Oh,
yeah,
what a nightmare.
Yeah, he
makes me so angry.
And that dime size group that was like, out in the, what was it, the 6
It was like a 3-4 line, 3-4, 4-5, something like that.
My first question to him was, did you line it up proper? Like, where does it go? And what was your response, Frank? Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
He hadn't taken note of it. And so this is why we teach this, right? And I know it's a thing we teach now, just like he said. You always, absolutely, without fail, if this is the tip of the plunger, your arrow shaft dead center, right?
Yep.
Not low, not high, dead center.
Yep.
And the reason you do that is, if the wire moves, all you got to do is pull it out. The slope of your wire, whether it's a sniper or a ZT or a, but it's going to move the shaft up or down slightly, and you'll know where the correct position of that wire is based on where it stops and sits. And when it sits dead center tip, you're golden.
So and just I'll let me comment a little bit on that, because I would normally always put it in the middle of the plunger. However, what I was not in a good state of mind. I was angry.
You're stressed. You're way stressed.
I was way stressed. So my I don't know response was more of a I don't even want to think about it. I just need to figure this out.
You were in panic. Like I said,
I was in panic mode, 100%. 100%. I shot the best 30 arrows in competition I ever shot in my life, and then had a major catastrophe happen. And arguably an inexperienced competitive barebow shooter at that point in time. And because I knew I was shooting one of the top scores that was probably going to be, if I would have kept that pace.
Yeah,
I knew I was going to, but there I was thinking in the future and doing all that nonsense I know I don't do now.
And you're right. So that's why I did this. So you're trained, right? You were able to collect your thoughts somewhat. You turned to me, and you said, "What do I do?" And I said, "Go fix it. Like, take your two ends of equipment failure and go fix it." And so you did. The average novice would have panicked and it would have been game over. Like, their scores would have tanked. Even if I would say, I would hope, even if they had a coach there, if the coach didn't immediately say, "Go get it fixed," and tried to tinker with it on the line, psychologically, your confidence.
Oh yeah, 100%. And you have to learn to deal with that. Like, that was honestly, like, even compared to US Open, compared to the classic shootout eliminations and all that stuff, like, that was probably one of my most stressful archery competitive moments ever.
I wish I had a camera.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, it probably was. And because I know, like, and the worst part was then the next day thinking to myself, oh, you have to shoot a 550. You have to shoot a 550. I shot like a 540 something or a 539 or something like that. And you can't think that way. Like, I can't. And it took me way too long. Two comments here. It took me way too long to realize that you cannot put that expectation on yourself. Number one. Number two, shortly after the podcast had started, like that year, after having a really good first 2 years of competition and the podcast growing some, I struggled with the expectation that people, because of my association to the podcast, that I need to always be at my best 150% of the time. And Grayson was really like the one who kind of like mentally talked me through that and was like, no, Frank, no one gives a shit how you shoot. Like, you need to understand, nobody cares more than you do. And you need to stop caring and just concentrate on shooting. And it wasn't.
I'm going to disagree with that in some sense.
Go ahead.
No one cares whether you're shooting your personal bests.
Right. That's okay. Yeah.
Your friends care if you're shooting to where you feel you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree about that. I think it's in regards to me worrying about what others think.
Competitive wise, no one cares.
Yeah. Nobody really cares. I mean, they want you to do good. That's the thing. Right. But you can't worry about, well, oh my gosh, I'm not shooting well in front of all of these people. You can't worry about that.
So the ancillary to that epiphany, and I didn't want to give it away on Bede's post because I was so proud he came up with it, the first part. But the second part of that is, and this is probably going to rustle some feathers, the people that do care can outshoot you already.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If they are, no, how do we phrase that? If they wanted to care, can outshoot you.
Yep. No, I don't think that shouldn't ruffle any feathers.
Yeah,
it shouldn't.
But that's the other big part of that epiphany. And once you realize that, it lifts a huge burden off your shoulders.
Sure.
You stop worrying about chasing that score, and you start going back to the event just to shoot for your own personal enjoyment.
Shut up, Demer.
And
sorry, that was me. That was me. Yeah. I think Christian Wilder was like, "Hey, what's happening, people?" And Demmer's comment was Frank shot a dime size group in the touring, and that's not at all. So look, he's not even on the podcast right now.
Crap. Yep.
And I get shit.
Yep.
But so I was hanging out with him earlier today, right? He made me some strings. Trust me, everyone. The serving's plenty long, and he was ice fishing. So I met him up at Lackawanna State Park, and we were hanging out up on the ice there and stuff, and chatting and whatnot. And he fished for like 2 hours. That's it.
Yeah.
I thought the guy was like dedicated.
So
He fished for 2 hours and then left the ice. And then it was like, "Oh, you can help me carry everything off the ice." I'm like, "All right."
You know why he stopped fishing? Because you were there.
Because I was there to help him.
He didn't want to carry it all back by himself.
What a dick. Anyway, so we can keep chatting to that. I mean, we covered so much that I had no intention on covering whatsoever. I'm gonna go back through some of the comedy as well. Just to see if there's any questions or comments. Coming from Florida. Bede says, "I freak out because I can't just walk in my range work area to use their microwave and arrow cutter." That's funny. Grayson, Mr. NTS. Wonderful. Some truth. Let's say so. Jack, actually, that was the question, right? As you were logging in, is there some truth about the linear draw puts more people at risk for shoulder injury? We talked about that in depth. The answer is no.
I'm gonna say it depends.
Yeah.
You push beyond your limits on what your body's capable of in that draw.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely could. But that's that's a qualifier for any form, any movement. Like you put yourself down, body's capable of, you're gonna get hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Yep. You need to get to a full drop position as simple as possible and as consistently as possible. And that's it.
And be able to hold it
comfortably. Yep. Yeah.
Well,
comfort. No, that's a great word.
It'll never be comfortable. It is, you need to get to a draw hold that is as comfortable as possible.
Yeah. You have to find a position that allows you to relax while under tension. You have to be calm. You have to be able to, you can't have all that extra tension in your shot. So like what I mean by that, just for an analogy for everyone who's listening to this, if you try to shoot this way, barebow this way, you could see I'm like really hunched in. You try to shoot that way, you're using a crap ton of muscles that you aren't going to give you a repeatable shot. So that's what I'm talking about. Like that's negative tension. I talk about like the excessive coiling and all that stuff. That's extra tension that wreaks havoc on target panic. I don't care who you are. I will argue till the day is over that the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shooters I worked with, both compound, Olympic, and barebow, I will tell you right now, I truly, truly believe that is the foundation of opening the door to target panic. But anyway, forget that. Well, we're going to move on. Mike Bredsinger, that's Maggie's dad, said, "Doesn't the linear use more back than rotational equals less shoulder injuries?" Why don't you comment to that, Elton? I mean, yes and no.
Yes, it does. Because the lats are a larger group of muscles.
Right.
It depends, because I'm going to go back to saying, if you're putting yourself outside the parameters of what your body's capable of that time, your risk of injury increases. Right. That's right. Physiology.
Yeah. John said, "Elton and I are fishing tomorrow, right, buddy? Question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point."
Really hope. I need the afternoon off. I have a sled, so I'm not even afraid to carry half of his crap.
That's why he wants you to go fishing.
Partly, yeah. But we enjoy fishing. It's a great pastime. It's a stress reliever, big stress reliever.
Nate Wallace, that's funny. Nate Wallace says, my form went to shit after I got my level 2 and I tried using all of my NTS stuff. Hey, there's number 3 for us. Yeah, how about that? I spent 6 months after my level 4 trying to make as much NTS work as possible. And yeah, it just wasn't.
And he's
good. And then I broke and finally listened to
everybody
John
that
and
ends
Grayson.
broke, raise your hand.
Yeah. And let's face it, the one thing I've noticed, Elton, you know, the further I get into the Barebow project, the further I get into this archery industry stuff and the coaching, I have less time to shoot and train. But with the shot process that I teach and that I shoot with, I am able to still be in a good competitive state with less practice.
Sure.
So, and that's kind of that shortening that journey that we talked about. Shoot the harder way, but once you get it, you know, if you practice the same amount you did before just to get efficient and shoot consistently, your scores may go through the roof. But you know, it's all about the journey. You can make any form work with the right amount of arrows.
Yeah, you put the effort in, you can make anything work.
But you have to decide, do I want to be more consistent, have a more forgiving shot, have, you know, and again, like look at the people who are the most consistent time and time again at all of the disciplines, really the ones that involve the highest amount of accuracy, and that is target archery. Sorry to all my 3D people out there, it's not 3D. You have a big fat softball to shoot at. It's not the same. Sorry.
Don't knock them.
Yeah, I'm not knocking them. I'm not knocking them at all. I'm just saying, like, your most consistent, accurate shooters are the ones that are able to put 6 arrows in the middle of a baseball-sized 10 ring at 55 meters, or those field rounds. You know, like that's where you really separate. Yes, when you're shooting that high volume of arrows as accurate as possible. Let me see what else. Just John being a jerk. More of John being a jerk.
I haven't even checked the
I'm just being facetious.
I hammered my cell data this month, so like I'm restricted to like 128K a minute at this point. So like I haven't checked the Facebook feed at all today.
John says, so here's a Frank upset apple cart again. Frank, no, John, that was Elton started upsetting the apple cart. John says, when starting a quick new tune, do you guys specifically look for something to improve on your current tune, or do you feel more like just changing up the whole thing, i.e. arrow thickness, light point, heavyweight, drastic changes, or minimal?
Okay. That's a good question.
What's that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, it is. Do you want to lead off with that?
Yes. It depends. Like it's the same answer, right? It depends on your tuning confidence capability. So if you are extremely well versed in all the tuning parameters of your bow and the repercussions of making every single change, the world's your oyster. You can just say, I'm going to go change something drastic. If you don't understand the entire encyclopedia of those tuning parameters and you only understand a handful, restrict yourself to that handful. That's my open advice to anyone who decides they want to do something like that. Where do I sit? I have pretty comprehensive encyclopedia. That which I don't know, I have the fortune of being able to contact, except you and John.
I would put me in that category. John and Grayson are definitely my go-to. They're the encyclopedia. I reap benefits of their knowledge all the time when it comes to that stuff, for sure, because you don't come out of the gates with tuning knowledge. That's an earned asset. You earn it by failure. You earn it by making mistakes. You earn it by not, doing what you should have done, or missing a component, which is what I literally didn't tune my bow and it was one of those things where I just got busy. You weren't here for the conversation, but I think you might have figured it out or whatever. I literally didn't tune my bone all year. I just threw the indoor arrows on and shot, and then it kind of forgot about it. And then I'm like racking my brain on the wall, like, why are these arrows feel like they should be going smack dab in the middle? And I'm just getting these wild shots, and it didn't matter. I ended up like way knock high. My brace height was a ½ inch short. My tiller was off, and my plunger was out, and it was too light. And I was like, all over the map. And, so for my situation, in reference to John's question about, I ended up going back to ground zero of tuning because I had a bear shaft laying there, and I was like, I'm going to shoot this and see where it goes.
Yep.
And then it hit 12 inches right, and it was like this. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. How am I ever going to shoot at least relatively decent scores that way? So, what ended up happening is a complete breakdown, reset everything, because I moved the plunger over. I could add a little bit tension to my 500 spine RZ, and then refined dead center. And I sent, and I'll put the picture in the video version of the podcast. I sent John and Grayson a picture of a 3-spot with fletch staff or bear shaft, top spot 3:09, fletch like 1:09, and bear shaft 3:09. Boom, boom, boom. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty close. Then I noticed my brace height was short, and I ended up having to briefly like start all over again, but it didn't take long to get back, so it's okay. And then and then you want to talk immediate confidence boost. Because I've been struggling a little bit, and I'm racking my brain, like, why, what is going on? This is not making any sense. And and it's 100% my fault. But then think about, like, and I was talking about this earlier, Elton, like the negative rabbit hole of like, I feel like I'm shooting like crap because I'm getting crappy results, but maybe I'm not really shooting like crap. And then you start second guessing yourself, and then when you start shooting bad arrows, and you're trying to tune bad arrows, and it's like,
so that's a perfect segue, because while we were talking, I also thought of a very important caveat to this conversation. Knowing the impact of everything that you do when you make changes is secondary to being able to pre-produce a consistent shot. If you can't do the same thing every time, then there's no way to know whether the change.
I mentioned that earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
no, and Demer, we've talked about that. Like, if you can't keep a relatively consistent, like if you can't keep 3 arrows on the target, diving down a tuning rabbit hole is just like,
and no one's saying I won't go that far.
I'm not saying not tune. I'm not saying that, but
have to fly exactly the same.
Go to your basic tune.
For me, Friday night was an hour and 40 minutes of shooting, and at least 2/3 of those shots were comes off clean, and tail right, and crabs down, and then straight. And after 30 or 40 of those out of 60 arrows, you have to say, okay, even if we eliminate variations because of bad release or poor form, or I moved the bow, I torqued it, I gripped it, whatever.
Yeah.
There's something up there, right? And so that was the impetus, the catalyst to say, I need to fix it. I'm sitting there doing it, and like, flat out told John, like, this sucks. I can't shoot these. I got to find something different. And I had some stuff at home that I had in mind. So, I had them ready to tinker with. And so this is my commercial plug for all of the archery arrow manufacturers. For everybody out there, if you buy arrows, always buy one more than you think you need, because you're going to leave that as a bear shaft forever.
Oh yeah.
Keep
That's
it.
good advice.
And so
you can order singles from LancasterArcherySupply.com. There you go.
Yeah. Well, for most brands and most model shafts, some are dozens only. So that there you're kind of stuck, and that means you only ever get to have 11 shootable arrows. But having that bear shaft on hand is like critical to the pick tune mentality of saying, let me just see if it work. Shoot a fletch, make sure it goes somewhere near the target, right? At whatever distance you want to start at. I generally start at 10. For people that are newer at tuning, if you're afraid you can be way, way off, start at like 5, start at 6 yards. It's very hard to miss a 30-inch bail at that distance, even if you have a horrifically bad tune, because your bear shaft's going to come off the bow and it's going to almost land sideways. Just make sure there are no, and I learned this the hard way, expensive. Make sure there are no hard like target support frames near the target to do this. Because if the arrow comes off sideways hard enough, when it hits the point and it decides to lay over and smack the target sideways like this, if there's anything hard like a metal,
Yeah, you hit that arrow on the side like that, it's gonna snap. Yeah.
Boom, and it's gonna fall. So yeah, don't do that with $20 arrows like I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, like have that bear shaft, and that way you're literally ready to go. And that's what I did. I said, I got two shafts that I think I want to try. I have a set of nano SSTs, full length 750s, with 110 grain points, glue-ins. And I have a set of Maxima RZs, recurve RZs 650s. And I have the components to build them however I want. I have aluminum inserts, I have brass inserts, like I mentioned before, they go up to 70 grains. And I have screw-in point RPS points that go up to 300 grains. I don't think I'd ever shoot something that insanely high, but I have it there if I need to tune to see how in or out of range that arrow shaft is for the bow as it's set up, before I start tinkering with, it's taking 200 grains up front to make this thing fly kind of straight. But I don't want to run 200 up front. So let me see if I turn up my tiller bolts so that I go up, a turn and a half. Like I couldn't even tell you what like the exact poundage amount would be. John would be better at that. But for me, it's like, if I turn it up a pound on both, I turn up a turn on both tiller bolts. Again, I always check after a couple shots, make sure my tiller's back to 0, because that's where I like it. I like the bow the way it feels that way based on how I distribute my hook percentages.
Sure.
And my grip pressure, where I place it. Some people have a higher grip. It's going to change where your tiller needs to be. You want a lower, like palm-based grip, it's going to change where your tiller needs to be. So this is those interrelated things that I was talking about.
A lot of people don't know that. They don't know how or why they relate.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people who worry about that stuff that really don't have any business worrying about that stuff either. And I was actually going to mention, maybe we should just quickly, because I've been going at this for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, but we more than covered what we needed to cover. But where, if you don't mind, where do you start, or what would your recommendation be to start your first basic tune for a new shooter? What do you think? Where does that person go, and what do you look at? I have my way, but we can, ours is probably similar, but go ahead.
So this is a question that I've pontificated many, many a time, because and I'm sure you have too, as a barebow coach, are approached with this question, right? And so the knee-jerk response is always talk to a good barebow coach. And like I said, there's not a lot, right?
No.
But the handful that are out there are pretty open and amicable to an introductory conversation, right? Yeah. And so that gets you in the ballpark on where you need to be. It's usually like an hour-long conversation. And I'm just gonna make the plug. If you feel that the conversation was worthwhile to that person, then by all means, please.
Contribute. I guess the problem is there's so few around, and most people who are Olympic recurve only coaches or have that experience, they don't understand string walking. They don't understand.
So
most of them don't bear tune.
That's not so.
Or bear shaft tune.
Without diving down a rabbit hole, that's not part of the introductory conversation, or at least for me. When someone takes the time, and I used to think it had to be in person, because it is more effective in person. It
Sure.
will not even remotely disqualify that notion, but it is possible over the phone. If the person is somewhat honest and is willing to work with said coach, like I've done it over the phone, I'm sure you could do it over the phone. We're adept enough at putting someone in the ballpark. If you have a video communication link like FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, it becomes incredibly effective because from there we can tell them where to put their body, show them how we put our bodies. They can mimic it. At that point, we can start finding draw length and on physical physique, know approximate draw weight. Now, if you don't have any access to that, which is the question you're asking me, where do you start? Where you start is a riser that you can lift.
Yeah.
I say that because I've had students come to me thinking, well, I'm just going to buy once, buy one, cry once, buy once, right? Kind of deal. And they'll go drop $400 or $500 on a riser. And they're not in a physical stature to be able to support a 3-pound riser or great. They're at a point where they need an entry level riser, and it sucks because it's like, well, you're spending $100, $150 on this riser that you're probably going to outgrow in 2 months if you're serious about this.
Right.
But necessary stepping stone, because you don't want to have the heavy riser, because the heavy riser causes that angle, right? You're going to be like, I can't hold it up, but I'm going to try to use my back to hold it up because my deltoid's not strong enough, and suddenly do this.
That happens in compound too, and Olympic recurve.
Because people see compounders hang rods and weights off on it, like, I want to do
15,
that too.
18, 20-inch rod off the back, 30-inch stabilizer off the front. You see a 10-year-old kid, and they're like this.
Yeah, and their scope and their optic is like a pound by itself. They're like half a pound. Like, so they're slinging like 6 pounds, 7 pounds, and like they can't, So yeah, it sucks, but you need a beginner's riser. And where I say, if you want to buy once, cry once, spend it on the rest, spend it on the pleasure. Those are the things that are going to move with you.
That's
the
good
riser,
advice.
Okay. Limbs, it's the same deal. If you're, and I pretty much will say, I've not met a beginner archer. Beginner meaning I'm new to this. I want to try barebow. I've never really shot more than like a child's fiberglass compound bow.
Yeah.
Nobody should be starting like above 25 pounds off the fingers. And that's only if you're of well stature. If you're of medium build or less, it should be like 22, 23.
Yes. So all of you trad hunters out there that are even remotely motivated to shoot barebow, and you shoot 50 pounds and you're snap shooting, understand that when you come to barebow and start string walking and have to aim in the middle, that extra poundage on your finger, despite what Kissigly might say, is going to make your target panic a million times worse. You might have to dial back from 55, 60 pounds, 50 pounds to 35.
Yeah, I don't know if
gotta swallow your ego a little bit, but I'm just saying.
Sure, Zach's watching, but if he is, or whenever he does get around to listening to this, I'm curious if he's invested in the 25-inch riser yet.
He shot trad veins for 50 meters. That's all I gotta say.
I know.
We told him to shoot 5-inch feathers, but he didn't listen.
I tried real hard. I told him to put a tight helical on him.
Yeah.
He totally didn't believe me when I said flew arrow feathers.
Anyway.
But yes.
Sorry. Squirrel. So but back to the basic tune, the basic new shooter tune. So they got their first, let's go through, like, they got their first 25-inch riser and like medium limbs or long limbs, whatever. Where do you start? Well, first of all, a great place to start is tuning for barebow. Again, shout out to Rick Stonebreaker. That is really a great document, great resource. Guideline. And that's what we're talking here. That's what we want to talk guidelines. We want to talk like, where do you start?
I say that not because it's nothing against Rick.
No. Sure. It's definitely a baseline. This is where you go.
Right. I don't think he even intended for it to be, I want to choose my words carefully here because I don't want to offend him. A comprehensive approach.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I've even heard him say to me, like, yeah, it's just, it's a way to do it.
Yeah, to get started.
Right. But the mistake I think a lot of people have made, whether overseas or whatnot, that their only exposure to these conversations prior to the project, the Barebow project, was what they find online. And so there are more than a few circles that treat the document like it's gospel. And I'm going to say, it's the Ford Pinto analogy again. Can you make that work at a certain point? Absolutely. Is it going to be the easiest way for you? Not always. Right. But it is a good guideline. And my starting point is somewhat similar. I don't go through all of the effort of the matchstick. I think that's still in there. Or anything like that on the plunger. Because I know where, like I said, I like to run my plunger tension. I like a little bit of smushiness off the medium spring, but backed out. So I'm like somewhere around 7 to 8 on the biters. Again, that's just me. If you have a really sloppy release, that could penalize you a lot because you're giving the arrow a lot of movement. If you have a really tight, clean release, then it may benefit you. It's a personal preference. But for me, that's roughly where I start my plunger. So then I start my center shot just outside of center.
Yep. Outside, left. If you're a right-handed shooter, left of center.
Yeah, just
the arrow, left-hand shooter would be right of center, which would be the string lined up down the middle of the riser.
The terms that I use when I'm teaching is outside is away from the window, inside is towards the window.
Yeah.
Okay. From the archer's perspective, but it works either way, and that's why I use it. Like if I'm looking this way, outside is still away. I try not to use left and right because it's confusing, and when I'm teaching a left-handed archer,
that's good. That's a good tip.
It complicates things, right? I don't translation if I just say, move it out away from the riser, move it in toward the riser, move your knocking point up or down. Like those are no matter whether you're left-handed or right-handed. So I start slightly outboard of center. I start my knocking point above center, maybe 3.5 inch somewhere. Like I let the bow tell me where it needs to go based on tune, based on my shooting form at that point in time, and it evolves. Like as long ago, I actually shot middle hanger to the K9, and my parameters were different at that point in time. And I couldn't even tell you what they are because I don't care anymore. I changed to this anchor, like this is where I need to be roughly when I start. And that's just what I do. And then I move things, and I make those adjustments as part of the tuning process to get the arrow flying where I want it to go. And then the bear shaft gets mixed in. And that's when I start determining whether the knocking point's correct, and then from there, whether the spine. And I've attempted to write a document on this in pursuing the vein of what Stonebreaker did, because I didn't feel there was an appropriate document that would teach basic barebow tuning. Right?
Oh, so like a little bit more comprehensive, because that is definitely more like an Olympic recurve. Almost
similar. It is, it's an animal
guideline. It's a guideline. Yeah. So I mean, just to try to, just because it's been 2 hours, and I'm probably going to try to cut this back. You're looking at brace height, whatever the spec on the bow is, brace height. If you're new, just go even tiller. Make it easy on yourself.
Even tiller.
Yeah, even tiller.
Somewhere between 1/2 and 9.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I try not to twist the bejesus out of my bowstring.
No.
You don't want excessive spiraling in your bowstring. It can. I don't know that this is controversial, but I've operated under the pretense that I don't want it because it can induce excessive coiling, which kind of like is a springy.
Yeah.
So I try to keep mine. To I don't want to say
it spec,
but keep it reasonable. Like I think numbers of like 10 twists or something per foot or something like that. I don't know. I really don't. I just, when I'm stringing up the bow after I build the string, I twist it a bunch of times and I'm like, that looks.
I don't do that. I don't build strings.
Get on it. Sidebar. It doesn't hurt to learn. You don't have to be great at it, but it doesn't hurt to learn. And it is actually, there's one component that's critical to it that all of my advanced students, I require them to know how to do. They have to know how to reserve string.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I know how to do that. It's no problem. But
but not every
strings. I'd rather
most people don't even own a serving tool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I have that. Yeah, that's no problem. I've been doing that a long time. But
right. Well, you own a shop.
A shop. Yeah, exactly. I just don't build strings.
But most archers don't. And the reasons it's critical is you may have a knocking point failure.
Yeah.
You may have a string serving failure in the middle of an event.
Sure.
And you don't like, if you can avoid it, you don't want to change your string in the middle of it.
Yeah. You want to mitigate that as best you can.
The wear characteristics around the knocking point where the knock clips onto your serving is an integral part of your tune because it determines when the arrow comes off the string during the harmonic oscillation at release. So you don't want to change that. If you can avoid it, you don't even want to reserve it. But if it breaks loose at the end, because that's typically where it breaks, you need to know how to back serve it and to pull it tight to clean up the end so it doesn't keep unraveling on you. Because if it does, your game's over.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my sidebar. You should know how to string. You don't have to be the one that does it for you. You can go buy pretty fancy strings all the time, but you absolutely should have done it and know how to do it.
Oh, there's nothing fancy about them. They all come from Denver, so you know that. Anyway, all right.
Beautiful strings.
Yeah,
I will say I am jealous.
He does do it. He does a good job. I appreciate it. I appreciate the length of his serving. All right. I guess. Gosh, we covered so much, Elton. Holy crap! This was that wasn't even intended. It just turned into. That's what happens when we end up talking on these topics all the time.
Yeah. Well, this is what should happen. Like
there's a window inside of what our conversations are like all of the time. FYI.
These are the discussions that Barebow archers should be having.
Yeah, I guess.
Not where do I put my stuff?
Yeah.
How do I find out where the best place is for that?
I might have to split this one into two. I don't even know. two episodes. All right, dude. I think we're gonna shut her down. I appreciate you. I appreciate you making that crazy drive from Jersey and taking the time to hop on and spending this. It's already 11, whatever.
I love dumping all the information that I have stored in my head because it lightens the load.
Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, dude. You have a good night. Thanks so much. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. We get to hang out at the Lancaster Archery Classic. If you haven't signed up, you're running out of time. Go do that. We have the Advanced Barebow Seminar at my facility next weekend with me and Demmer. If you want to still sign up, you could. There's definitely space. It's a big facility, so whatever, we can take whoever wanted to sign up, really. I would take advantage of that. It's a week before the classic for a reason, so that if you really just come down and almost stay just for the week and do all the barebow archery that you could probably get a full of. So make sure you guys check out that. And I didn't technically do the intro. I'll be doing a separate intro for the podcast. But I tell you guys all the time, you have a fee for every episode, and your fee is to share it. If you enjoyed it, if you got something from it, if it's going to help you, if you thought it was funny, whatever, your fee is to share it with people who need it. If you remember the podcast and you see a post on Facebook and they're like, hey, I don't understand tuning. And you could be like, hey, here's episode 44 of the Barebow Project. And they talked about this pretty damn extensively. Go check it out. That's your fee. That's it. You don't have to share it right now. You have to share it tomorrow. Whatever. Just remember the topics. But thanks for sticking with us. Elton, enjoy the snow tomorrow, tonight, now, tomorrow. And
it's still going. We got
still going out there. Yeah.
Going, so.
Surprised my pager hasn't gone off. I shouldn't have said that. We're knock on wood. All right. Peace out, man. You have a good night. Thanks so much. See you guys.
Good straight, guys.